So what is courageous consulting? There's many types of different consulting and there's so many different consulting tools that go with them. Hi, my name is Joshua and since the 1990s, I've been consulting around the world, both internally and externally. I've made plenty of mistakes consulting and I've learned from those mistakes and turned them into retakes. I'm fortunate enough to have been mentored by some of the best McKinsey and Deloitte consultants. And I've even won contracts from under some of those big five consulting firms, which does make for some really, really awkward conversations in the airport business lounges. But winning those contracts was less about getting a seat at the table. And it was more about building and gaining the trust of the clients and the stakeholders and really, really managing those relationships and those expectations that they have. It's all centered around trust. So what's this got to do with courageous consulting? Well, it's about having frank and honest conversations, frank and honest feedback about what is happening and showing initiative as a consultant. It's also about having the courage to work through any of the challenges that come up between you and the client, and whether that's you as a consultant internally or externally. Okay, we're talking about both here. It's also about gaining that trust in a manner that's professional and that's credible as well. So let's start at the top. What is the purpose of consulting? Now, I've got my own definition for this. You may have your own, but through many, many years, several decades now, I've come to learn that it's about the transfer of expertise, experience, and an external view from the consultant to the client. So just to break that down, this is really about the consultant being able to transfer their expertise and experience and their external view that the client doesn't already have. And if you think about that, if they had that expertise, experience, or that externalized view, they wouldn't be calling in a consultant. So from my experience, the purpose of consulting is really about the transfer of experience, expertise, and the external view from the consultant to the client. So if we acknowledge that that is the purpose of consulting, and there'll be different definitions, of course, I want to now look at 4 levels of consulting. And this may or may not offend some people. I suppose I need to come from a place of experience and lessons learned. But the 4 levels that I've seen in my career have really been, if we start at number 1, the contracted pair of hands. Now, this term came from a gentleman by the name of Peter Block, and I absolutely recommend that you get hold of his work, you read his books. He's done a lot of work on flawless consulting. But when we talk about a contracted pair of hands, this means that you're not necessarily a consultant, more you're a contractor and you're an extra pair of hands to get the work done because no one else wanted to do it or had the capacity to do it. So you're really a hired worker. So first level is contracted pair of hands. The next level of consulting is really that doctor-patient health check. Now you're thinking, what on earth is he talking about health checks and doctors and patients when we're talking about learning consultants in an organization? Well, the doctor-patient health check is really where you're hired to come in and do an audit and do a health check of the organization, give them a list that they can tick off and write them a prescription of what needs to be done. You're really there to come in as a set of eyes to show them the gaps that they didn't know they already had. Now, if you think about that, typically you're not asking someone to come in and look for gaps if you didn't already realize there were gaps there. So there are some flaws, there are some concerns in that doctor-patient health check. It can be quite profitable if you want to just get in and out, but you want a long-term relationship, you want to see long-term results. The contracted pair of hands and the doctor-patient health check levels of consulting really don't cut it these days. Our third level or our next level up is the one where they're buying expertise and experience. Or if I use some more simple language, you're a hired gun. They're hiring you to come in with that expertise and experience because they don't have it and they don't have the time to learn it. They just need things done. The flaw or the risk in that buying expertise and experience or buying the hired gun is that it's not sustainable and it's not duplicatable. So it means that they're bringing you in to do work that they can't do, but it raises the issues of sustainability, which I'll talk about shortly. The next level is really what we're talking about today, which is courageous consulting. And as we said, that's really about that deeper trust, that frank and honest feedback, the initiative and the courage to work through challenges and continuing to gain that trust through professional and credible manners. So how do we do this? How do we get to this jump of courageous consulting? We know that we've got capabilities here in the framework, but I like to keep things simple. I mentioned that there's always a fleet of tools, and we always all have a number of tools as consultants. The one that comes to mind, though, is an acronym, and I'm going to leave you with an image in this quick session of a Swiss Army knife. So I want you for a moment to just picture that Swiss Army knife. You've probably got it in your mind already. It's probably red. It's probably oblong shaped, and it's got lots of different features that come out of it. And it's a good one around consulting because there are handy tools that we've got, and we build them through experience. We bring new tools in that the organization didn't already have. But I want to use Swiss as an acronym to bring us back on track to this fourth level of consulting, which we're calling courageous consulting. So the S stands for service, and we want to be of service, not in servitude. I'll expand on that in a moment. The W stands for with. So we want to be with or in collaboration with, not doing work for or carrying the work for the client. Really big distinction there about the difference between being with them or working for them. We'll expand that one in a moment as well. The I stands for interdependent influence, not dependent delegation. We really want to have that relationship and that interaction that is interdependent, not dependent, not independent, but we want interdependent, where we are supporting each other, being the consultant and the client. And we definitely don't want to be in a place where we are in a place of dependency and having work delegated to us or delegating it back. We really want to support that working with, but in an interdependent way. We'll expand on that shortly. The second last S stands for solution-centric. We need to be solution-centric, not symptom-seeking. So many times we'll have a client that wants us to address the symptoms with a training fix or a quick program, but we're not getting to the heart of the solution. We're not understanding why it came up in the first place. So a courageous consultant will definitely be solution-centric. And the last one I mentioned before is sustainable. The solutions that you put in place as a courageous consultant need to be sustainable without you, not scarcity-driven and dependent on you. Now, that one becomes really tricky, and it's a tough conversation to have with any of us that do any consulting work, because straight away I can hear the questions rolling off in your mind that, but I'm going to do myself out of a job. I need repeat business. We'll talk about how we do that when we get into sustainable versus scarcity. Let's break these down one by one and give you something to start thinking about and processing. How do I already have that skill? How can I build that skill and that capability to be a courageous consultant? So we start with the S, and the S was for service. We want to be of service. So if I use the analogy of working with your client, if you're going to be of service, you're going to teach them how to swim. But if you were in servitude and you were at their beck and call, you would jump in and you'd get dragged under and you'd drown with them while they're drowning. We don't want to get drawn down and dragged in or drown with them if they're experiencing a problem. That we can't be of service if we're going to drown with them. So part of our role to be of service is to teach them how to swim. Okay, we don't want to get dragged down with them. Moving on to our W, this is really about working with the client. So if we collaborate with them on the challenges and the solutions, and that means challenges between us and the client, it means new challenges that haven't been identified before. It could even be about the contracting itself. But if we collaborate with them through those challenges and we work side by side and we work on solutions, then surely we're fulfilling that purpose of consulting, which is to transfer expertise, transfer experience, and transfer our external view from us as the consultant over to the client. In contrast, if we're carrying the load for them, that means that you become the scapegoat who gets to carry the sins and the shortcomings of that project with you. Trust me, I've been there, and I've had my team, I've had colleagues that have been the scapegoat where they fell into the trap of carrying for the client. And then when things went pear-shaped or it didn't work out the way another stakeholder liked, they get to blame it on the consultant. And yes, I have been an internal consultant and seen externals hung out to dry because someone didn't like the outcome. So really, we want to collaborate with our clients, whether they be external or internal. We don't want to be carrying it for them. The I stands for interdependent, and that means looking out for ourselves and looking out for each other. It means having an understanding of the needs of both the client and the consultant. Because yes, your needs do play a part in this. You're there to be of service. You need to be at your optimum. You're probably charging a premium and you're there to get in and out and help them with that transfer we talked about before. So how do we understand the needs? Well, we need to understand not only who are we dealing with, but we need to understand the organization. And if we get a deep understanding, then we can have ethical influence with our client and with that organization. I'm not into having influence on people. From my experience, it does damage. When you do techniques to people, they do them back to you. But if you're able to have influence with them, it supports the collaborative approach. It supports the being of service. A quick tip, understanding my client's temperament or their psychological type has really helped me immensely over the years, because I can tune into whether they're a detail-orientated person or a big picture person, whether they're going to make their decisions based on rational thought processes or they're going to make them based on their values or their company values. I'm going to be able to understand whether they're more the have a list, have a plan, have a project plan type of person, or whether they're going to want to wing it and wait for the better options to come up at the last moment. The more I can understand about their needs, their deep psychological needs and the organizational needs, the more I can speak their language and draw out what we need to work collaboratively and to be of service. If I were to be working as a consultant in an independent manner, then that's more like the levels 1, 2, and 3 consulting that we talked about, the contracted pair of hands, the doctor-patient health check, or that buying the expertise. A courageous consultant knows the difference between working in a dependent manner and independent manner. And what we're looking for here is the interdependent manner, where we have open communication. We get our needs met in order to meet theirs. And it's a mutually valuable exchange and relationship that we have while we're consulting on that project. Just to touch on the dependent side, this is really where the work and the risk is delegated or dumped onto the consultant. You're really coming in and you're wearing the load. You will be that scapegoat because someone somewhere is going to say that wasn't the right solution, or a learner is going to miss out on what they truly need. So we really want to stay out of any kind of dependency as a consultant. One, for ethical reasons, but two, if we're really interested in increasing the learning of the individuals or the organization itself and making it a learning organization, we don't want them dependent on us. We actually want to transfer, remember, our experience, our expertise, and our external view that they can't see so that they become better for themselves as a client. So just to reiterate, the I is for the interdependent influence that we're looking to have. And we're looking to do that by truly understanding who we're working with and to be understood as well. The second last S was about solution-centric. And this is really getting beneath the symptoms. It's finding out the root cause and really getting down to understanding all the stakeholders' needs and is the solution working for them or not? Why does the problem present itself? Rather than just running out and doing a training fix or throwing a program or an e-learning program at someone and bang, we've ticked a box, you know, the training fix makes it go away. And yes, sometimes it does make the symptoms go away, but a courageous consultant is going to look deeper. It's going to be about going under the surface and looking to the heart of why the problem was there and really getting to the heart of a solution. We always remain solution centric. The last S is about being sustainable. And this one is probably the most challenging part of the conversation for courageous consultants, because if you're starting out in a consulting manner, you're running your own business, or you've got targets. And the reality is, in some of the large firms, consulting is not just about helping, it is about bringing in new business. If you're not bringing in that business and you're not making those targets, then how can you be working? So that dilemma sometimes drives the behavior of consultants. And I've seen what I deem personally as, or professionally, as unethical practices. I've been taught by other colleagues how to bait and hook clients, and I don't like it. I don't feel that it's ethical. I don't feel that it builds trust. And if anything, I spent a period of probably 5 to 10 years teaching my clients exactly how to get around that bait and hook. If you buy into scarcity, then you're going to want to put your hooks in. Like I said, I've seen how people teach how to do that, and I just don't agree with it. It doesn't build trust. The value in courageous consulting is linked to that purpose. I'm going to keep coming back to that purpose. Purpose of consulting is really to transfer the expertise, experience, and the external view from the consultant to the client, so that the best solutions are found and so they can be sustainable. So think about this for a moment. If the value was in transferring that and getting away from dependency and being interdependent and not being hooked into repeat business or some revolving line of business from the same client, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen not only for your reputation, but what do you think is going to happen for the client? But in case that's too big of a stretch, I can tell you from years of experience in doing this that typically they will actually come back. The very thing that you're not driving, which is them to come back and be dependent on you, actually happens. The more you hand over to them, the more capability you leave behind with your client, the more solutions you help them find and sustain, the more they trust you and the more likely that they are to come back and ask you for specific help on something else, or even better, a referral. We used to get so much referral business because our clients would trust us. Now, it probably helped that I spent a lot of time on the road teaching our big clients how the big 5 firms would bait and hook them, okay? I'll admit that, okay? And there's some people that may be watching this that are saying, hey, I remember you took a contract from us. It's not about winning or losing. For me, it's about what's in the best interests of the client. So if you've got that trust, if they know that they can absolutely trust you and you are there to do that job and then get back out, then they're more likely to come back. They're more likely to refer you. If, however, you are scarcity driven and independent, and you build that dependence from scarcity that they need you, then you just can't fulfill that purpose of consulting, can you? How are you transferring your expertise, experience, and your external view from you as the consultant to the client if you're holding something back, if you're making them need you or that they have to keep coming back to you? It's a big jump, I know, but if you really want to step up to this level of consulting, you need to start thinking differently. You need to start acting differently. And I guarantee you, I absolutely guarantee you, the trust that you will build with your clients will shift. The work will come, but for different reasons. So it's all good and well for us to have this Swiss Army knife. And I just reiterate, we've got service, not servitude. We're working with, not for. We're seeking independent influence, not dependent delegation. We're looking to be solution-centric, not symptom-seeking. And we want to be sustainable without you, not scarcity-driven, dependent upon you. Okay, there's 5 things to remember. I can remember Swiss, but what happens when you hit that part of the relationship where you meet resistance? And I guarantee you will. We all know the stories where it needs to be done in a different time frame. We just got less budget. We just had a change of the exco and we need to review the whole program. Resistance is real and you will experience it. And if you haven't experienced that in your consulting career, you're going to. It's just one of those things that happens. So what I'd like you to do is a very quick exercise with me. It's very, very simple, but I want you to get what it feels like to be working with that resistance. And I'd like you to take your two hands. Your right hand is going to be the client. The left hand is the consultant, which in this case will be you. And I want you to bring your hands together as if they're working together. Now, I want you to imagine that the client has just had a budget cut. The client doesn't understand what you've proposed. The client doesn't like the solution, or the client is saying, no, you can't get more budget or more time. And they're pushing resistance on you. I want you to start now pushing with your right hand against your left and get your left hand to just meet that energy and just push harder and harder. You can probably even see my hand shaking. So if you're not doing this now, do it with me live. Like, put your hands together. Don't just watch, do this. I want you to feel what it's like. Keep pushing with that right hand and then keep meeting it with the left hand. And you can see it's even hard for me to talk with you on this video, pushing my hands together. And just stop. That level of resistance, when you meet resistance with resistance, when you meet fire with fire, what do you think you get? Typically, you're going to get levels of conflict. You're going to get distrust. But from experience doing this all over the globe in different languages, different cultures, non-profits, in multinationals, in small business, in government, I can tell you that you're going to meet resistance, but it's never personal. Resistance is never personal unless you make it personal. For us, as a courageous consultant, as a professional, it's a choice in how we meet that resistance. So let's try that hand exercise again. The right hand, take your right hand, that's the client. Take your left hand, that's you, that's the consultant. Bring them together to start working together. And let's just throw up that you didn't give enough details, or that you're up against someone who's stonewalling you, or times got changed, or leadership got changed, and you're getting faced with resistance. Start pushing with your right hand, but offer no resistance with your left. Just start pushing with the right hand. And now just give a little bit, just firm. You're not actually fighting it, but just hold with the left and keep pushing with the right. And I want you to push and push with your right while I'm speaking. Do it with me right now. Just keep pushing with your right hand. Keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. Keep pushing up that resistance. Let the client keep pushing the resistance. And what do you notice in your right arm and your right hand? Keep pushing. Just keep pushing with the right. No effort with the left. Just keep pushing with the right. What happens with the right hand? Eventually, you can see my hand's even shaking right now. Eventually, it starts to get tired and it lets go. And you notice that the left hand had virtually no effort, but was able to come back to the middle. Now, what I'm trying to get you to see here is that if you meet resistance with resistance, it's meeting fire with fire. And you are at some point going to meet resistance when you're consulting. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. The difference is that a courageous consultant can do what Daniel Siegel calls name it to tame it. What we do is that we observe that that resistance is coming up, and we're wise enough to know that the resistance is always coming from fear or from an unfulfilled psychological need that the client has. So when I spoke before about understanding, say, temperament or psychological type, you might understand that you're presenting big picture and this person needs detail. You might understand that they're very planned and your proposal is too vague for them and they can't see the steps. Or you might be coming from a values base where they're very rational. There's any number of psychological needs, and they'll have organizational needs as well. So please understand that resistance is never personal unless you make it personal. as a courageous consultant, we can hold the line and we can hold that space for them, just like your left hand did, and let them express that resistance. But our key is to name it, to tame it. And by doing that, we're objectively highlighting what we see in the dynamic, what we see in the relationship. And then we go back to our Swiss Army knife. We're really looking to work with them then and collaborate on what is behind the resistance and work together with them so that they can work through in an interdependent manner, find a solution that's sustainable and feel like, yes, we were of service. So let's give a few names to these faces of resistance, and you may recognize some. I recommend that you make a list now. You'll probably add to that list, and I don't want you to go seeking them, but as soon as you recognize them, I want you to remember the left and the right hand, and I want you to remember that you will get some pushback. Okay, but if you want to keep that seat at the table that everyone talks about, then you own the seat. You allow them that space to vent or express that resistance. And then your job is to lay that out on the table in a very professional and compassionate manner. So the faces of resistance that we often see are, you know, the ones that need more detail, or the ones that flood you with way too much detail. We've got the timer, the person that's going to cut you out on time or draw you out on time. We've got the banker. The banker's the one that, you know, will cut the budget and then cut the budget again, or the one that you've got to go pleading to for more budget to get the best solution. We've got the controller. This is the person who, it used to be me. You know, I used to say, I want no surprises. Typically, if you are doing meaningful, courageous consulting, you are going to uncover surprises. So you need to know how to manage that across the line in your relationship with your stakeholders. Then we've got the passive or the silent. This is the person that gives you nothing. They say nothing. They don't give you enough detail. They just sit there in silence, and it's like watching paint dry, and you're waiting for some feedback. That could be a face of resistance. Another one that we do see quite often is the shopper. Some of you may have seen the shopper before, but this face of resistance is really, I think, unethical, because I've been on the end of it. I've received it, but the shopper is really shopping around consultants to build ideas to see if they can just do it themselves. Because clearly they don't have the expertise, experience, or the external view, but they're seeing if they can shop your ideas off you without reimbursing you properly for the full project and just wing it themselves. It is a form of resistance. We also see the intellectualizer, the one that's just going to over-intellectualize everything, or the moralizer, the one that was going to draw on the morals of we can't do that. It's always been this way. The one that can be the toughest to deal with is the stonewaller. Now, they can seem like the passive or the silent, but the stonewaller is often in resistance because they feel threatened. They've been told by their boss or by their stakeholders that they need to bring you in, and they're feeling that their job, their project, their livelihood, their work is under threat. If you're really going to be a courageous consultant, sit down and work through that with them. Be of service to them, actually help them. If you need to, make them look good. I'm not into that, but if that's what you need to do, then that will be success for you. So understand that these faces of resistance, they're always coming from fear or unfulfilled psychological or organizational needs. And the courageous consultant doing courageous consulting will be of service, not of servitude. We will be working with the client in a collaborative way, not for them or not carrying the load for them. We will be independently influencing, not dependent and delegating. We will be solution-centric, not seeking symptoms. And we will always work to being for the solution to be sustainable without us, not scarcity-driven and dependent upon us. So I hope this gives you a snapshot of courageous consulting. In terms of references, Peter Block's work on flawless consulting, I found invaluable. Edgar Sheen's work on humble inquiry and on process consulting has been invaluable to my career. Yes, I do. I owe a debt of gratitude to some of the Deloitte and McKinsey consultants, and they probably swear and curse at me when they see me in airport lounges and I win their contracts now, because I've understood how they operate and they do an exceptionally great job. But there's a reason why I've said no to working with those firms over my career, because I've found that I've found a place in the middle that takes a bit more courage, but builds a lot more trust. And I also want you to remember that that Swiss Army knife can have as many tools as you want, but if you keep it simple, you will engage. The final thing I'd probably want to share is that Asia Pacific ILP does have a process around the certified learning consultant where we can actually recognize that you do have these capabilities, these skills, these traits, and this experience. And if you don't, that we can help you get up to that level, because we want you to get out of that contracted pair of hands, the doctor-patient health checking, the just hired gun buying your expertise. We want to see more people like you and I as courageous consultants. So thank you. And any questions you've got, please ask, please post. Really happy to share experiences, particularly lessons learned, mistakes made, so that you too can start consulting from a courageous place and be the best professional you can in our industry.